Bile is a soapy substance that's made in the liver and it's stored in the gallbladder, and it helps us with a lot of our digestive and detoxification processes. So the health issues that can come along with bile that is not flowing the way that it should include things like IBS and skin issues, high blood pressure, nutrient deficiencies, and a whole lot more. So if any of the signs that we're going to talk about in this video for poor bile flow describe you, you are going to want to know about it. Let's go.
TC Hale is not a doctor and does not claim to be a doctor or licensed in any type of medical field. Don't be an idiot and use anything heard on the show as medical advice. This information should be used for educational purposes only, and you should contact your doctor for any medical advice. Now get off me.
Most people don't even know about the importance of proper bile flow, and it's great to hear more health experts talking about this more and more every day. So I'd love to hear in the comments now where you learned how important it is to have proper bile flow. Keep in mind that these 10 signs that we're going to talk about in this video are just possible markers for bile that is not flowing correctly. None of these things are diagnostic, and most people are not going to experience all of these signs. They may only experience one or two, but even if you're dealing with just one, that can still be a strong indication that bile flow may need some help to get it really moving again. So let's jump right into the first one, which is a light-colored stool. So what we're looking at here is a stool that is lighter than the color of corrugated cardboard. So bile is a green substance, so when it mixes with the food that was acidified in the stomach, then it can turn everything into a brown stool. That's what we see when it's coming out the back door, and people that check out their stool actually find a lot of health benefits from that. So be a stool gazer, be one of the cool kids, and make sure that your stool is darker than the color of corrugated cardboard. If it's not, you may want to put some effort into improving bile flow. Now it is possible to have a dark stool without bile flowing correctly, but this is a really big marker that's very common and one to watch out for. The second sign is chronic loose stool issues, including any of the fancy chronic diarrhea diagnoses that kind of go around out there. But if stool is loose, it's often a problem with bile flow. When we eat food, our stomach acidifies that food with hydrochloric acid. And then when that acidified food leaves the stomach and goes into the duodenum, which is the first 10 inches of the small intestine, that's when the gallbladder squirts the bile down onto that acid product. And bile is very alkaline, so that helps to neutralize those acids. So the stomach is made to hold those acids, but the intestinal tract is not. So if bile is not flowing well enough, then those acid products that leave the stomach may not get neutralized and they continue moving through the intestinal tract in their acidic state. Well, that could digest a hole right in the intestinal tract, and the body doesn't want that. So it brings all the water that it can to kind of cool this down, and then it rushes it out the back door and it kind of lifts you off the toilet like a rocket when you have this crazy diarrhea stuff. So this is often, and not always, but often an issue of poor bile flow and an inability to neutralize acids that are coming from the stomach. There are other causes of chronic diarrhea, but we see a lot of people experiencing this issue see great improvement once they can improve their bile flow. Sign number 3 can be recurring nausea. Basically, the liver filters all the toxins and the filth out of the body, and we kind of know that. But what a lot of people don't know is the liver takes a lot of that filth and puts it into the bile. So as the bile moves down through the intestinal tract, that filth can be taken out the back door. That's the main exit strategy for filth and toxins in the body. So when bile is not flowing correctly, the liver's filtering out all this junk and putting it in the bile, but then the bile's not taking it out. So a lot of these filth and toxins will get reabsorbed into the system, and eventually, as the liver becomes overwhelmed doing the same job over and over again, the system can become toxic. And a toxic environment can often send the signal of, hey, don't send anything else down here. We're still dealing with all the muck you sent down here before. So it'll make you feel a little bit nauseous to where you don't want to eat, and that can be a real problem. Helping bile to flow so that the body's natural way to take out the trash can function correctly can relieve nausea for a lot of people. We're going to come back to this one in just a second. The fourth possible sign is high blood pressure. Now, our blood pressure is kind of made up of things like proteins and minerals and glucose, as well as filth and junk. So a lot of times high blood pressure is just a situation where there's too much filth and junk thickening up the blood, causing the body to need more pressure to push that thick blood through the system. So just like we just talked about, if the body can't get filth and toxins out of the body, they accumulate, and they can accumulate in the bloodstream, thicken up the blood, and raise our blood pressure. So when we can get bile flowing correctly, the toxins can be taken out, and now the blood is not filled with all this filth and toxins, and the blood pressure can come down naturally. Now, there are other issues that can raise blood pressure, but it's really common to see high blood pressure people see their blood pressure come down to normal ranges once they can get bile flowing correctly. For some people, it can happen quite quickly. So if you have high blood pressure, especially if you're on blood pressure lowering medications, and you're going to take steps to thin your bile and get that flowing better and allow all the filth and toxins to leave the body, and so the blood won't be so thick, you really want to watch your blood pressure daily and kind of make sure that it doesn't go too low and create some low blood pressure symptoms that some people experience. Now, the fifth possible sign is the opposite of what we just talked about. It's low blood pressure. Yes. Poor bile flow can cause high blood pressure, but can also cause low blood pressure for totally different reasons. So remember when we talked about how that digestive process happens when food gets acidified in the stomach and then it leaves the stomach and then the bile squirts down from the gallbladder and it alkalizes that acidic product. Now, what else happens here is the acid meeting the alkaline. When that collides, it creates a sizzle. And that sizzle helps us bust that food apart and pull all the minerals and nutrients out of that food. So if somebody doesn't have both of these sides of digestion working correctly, say maybe bile is not flowing correctly, then they don't get that sizzle and they can't really access all the minerals and nutrients in the food that they're eating. And low blood pressure is often a sign of just not enough minerals in the system, or maybe someone could be peeing their minerals out too fast as well. That can be another problem. But the most common issue is digestive malfunctions that are not allowing them to access all the minerals in the food they're eating and bring those into the system so the body can use those. So when we see that happen, blood pressure can go really low. And really low, we're talking about that systolic number, the top number in your blood pressure reading, being below 112. So if you're a person and you're like, oh yeah, mine's always like 98/60, that's really low blood pressure, and it's a really strong sign that there's not enough minerals in the system, which means at least one of those sides of digestion and possibly both are probably not working optimally. Now, we have a totally free digestion course that can walk you through figuring out which aspects of digestion may not be working correctly and steps you can take to correct those. And we'll put the link to that totally free course in the description below this video. And when we're looking at low blood pressure, we can also view that as nutrient deficiencies. So if you have known nutrient deficiencies going on, that can be another sign that bile may not be flowing correctly and the digestive process may not be functioning the way that it should so that you can access all the nutrients in the food you're eating. The sixth possible sign for poor bile flow is trouble digesting fats. If you eat a meal higher in fats and you don't feel so great, or you just feel a little more bloated, or it just doesn't make you feel energized, you may be having trouble digesting fats. Because guess what? Bile is what the body uses to emulsify or break down those fats so that they can be used by the body. If we don't have enough bile flow, then we can't break down the dietary fats we're consuming, and then they start to rot and ferment, and they become a burden that the body has to deal with. So this can also lead us back to the nausea issue. A lot of times people eat a meal high in fat and they'll kind of feel nauseous afterwards because those fats are not being broken down correctly. Now they sit around the system and they become a little toxic and they make us feel pretty lousy. And this number 6 can also take us right into the sign number 7, which is acne or skin issues. So if a lot of these fats are not being digested correctly, the body will try to push some of them out through our pores. And then those undigested fats can block up our pores and create acne or other skin rash or skin irritation type problems. Now there are other factors that can be pushed out through the skin. Other toxins or filth and junk can be pushed out through the skin when there's too much in the system, but a lot of times that can lead right back to poor bile flow and an inability for the liver to filter out toxins and those toxins to get removed out the back door. So both of these issues can lead back to poor bile flow when you're looking at nausea or skin issues. Number 8 is if you're taking any type of medication that would raise estrogen levels. So there's a lot of medications out there that can raise estrogen, and estrogen is a stress hormone. A lot of birth controls will raise estrogen levels, but other medications can raise it as well, and a lot of medications are made to raise estrogen levels. A lot of women are using hormone replacement therapy. That's a really cool thing to do nowadays. It's all hip and everybody knows about. And the problem is that when estrogen levels go high, it seems to thicken up the bile, so it becomes too thick and sticky to flow correctly. And then we can create all these problems that we're talking about from poor bile flow. I also like to couple stress into this category. If you have a life that is very stressful and you're dealing with a lot of stress in your life, then that stress can raise stress hormones like estrogen, which seem to thicken up the bile and create the same type of situation. So any of those things can be viewed as a possible marker for, wow, I might need to check out if my bile is flowing right and take some steps to correct that if it's not. The ninth possible sign is a saliva pH below 6.5. So you can find pH testing strips at most health food stores or on Amazon and stuff like that. We'll put links to where you can find some in the description below as well. But when you can test your saliva pH, and you want to do this at least 2 hours after a meal, but not fasting, not first thing in the morning. And if that saliva pH is 6.5 or lower, that's a strong sign of an overly toxic system. And when the system is overly toxic, it's most commonly due to bile not flowing correctly and an inability for the body to remove all those toxins. So this is a simple test that you can do at home and check out if, oh, is this a possible marker for poor bile flow? And the 10th possible sign is another test that you can run at home using 10-parameter urinalysis dipsticks. And you can find these on Amazon as well too. We'll put a link where you can check those out in the description below. But when you can test your urine, you can kind of pee in a cup and just put this dipstick in the cup and then look at the colors according to the chart on the container. And if you see urobilinogen or bilirubin on that dipstick above the normal ranges, that's a strong sign that bile is not flowing correctly. If you want to learn more about those tests that you can run at home, just check the link for the free digestion course in the description below. But for now, watch our video on 5 steps to improve bile flow, so if any of these issues are showing up for you, you'll know steps you can take to get the bile moving again. I can't wait to hear about your results.